my review of Ori and the Blind Forest. So yeah, I played this game this week. I've never played it before, and probably the context here is, I'm a huge Metroidvania fan. Probably my favorite game of all time, up there with like a Rocket League, is Super Metroid. I love Super Metroid with passion, and Metroidvanias. I don't know. I think for me, there's some kind of maybe power complex thing. I just love how you keep building your power ups. You keep, making your character stronger. You keep discovering things. You keep, getting into the weeds and really, unlocking things that you couldn't do before. So it just gives you such a positive sense of progression that I really, really, really enjoy. And I've heard a lot about this game. Prior it was always an Xbox game. Didn't really seem like it was going to come to any other console. And it was one of the few games where I was like, maybe if I can get a really cheap Xbox One S or something like that, I'd go pick it up. But, alas, it ended up coming onto the Switch. So I was close to getting it on the Switch. But now that I have, and I'm trying out Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, it is a part of that subscription. So I thought, well, why not play it? So I actually started playing it this week and got through 100%ed it. Very, very, very cool game. So, just quickly, overall thoughts. For me, very much a fantastic game, Ori and the Blind Forest. I do understand the degree that people are sort of hyping this game up, but ultimately, I just feel like the game doesn't do anything new or different or exciting that necessarily warrants the level of hype about this game. And just looking at people's commentary about this game, it feels like they've almost gone the opposite, which is people are starting to dislike this game unfairly, I would say. And I think it's based on some of the hype that the game gets. Swinny, I actually didn't ask. Have you played through Ori before?
I haven't given it a fair shake. So I've only played through, let's say, the first, what you'd play through basically in an hour max.
Yeah.
I liked what I played though. The game is visually just absolutely beautiful. And honestly, that's probably half the appeal, and the music as well, for people. I've heard that it gets quite challenging, which is good because it starts off pretty straightforward and easy. So it's good to know it does, I think it does go get more, I guess, interesting in that sense. So in terms of what you said about, it doesn't do anything new and stuff, well, I think it's also important to remember this game actually came out quite a while ago. There's been a lot more.
It was 2014.
There's been a lot more entrants. Honestly, the Metroidvania genre has actually got way more crowded than it ever was kind of around when the Castlevania Igarashi games were coming out. There's so many more of them, from your, Hollow Knight, The Messenger, all these kind of games that are...
there's dozens.
Yeah.
Of high quality ones as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's where... And that may not have impacted your opinion at all, but I think it's important for people to remember that the first Ori did come out before a lot of those titles did. So,
yeah, and I should say, when I'm saying I don't feel like it's done much new, I'm taking it from a perspective of when it came out. So not so much, especially things like Hollow Knight, where I feel like it becomes a very unfair comparison, because that game, while being a Metroidvania, does have other elements of games incorporated into the mechanics. But, I'm very much looking at it like, 2014. So I'm almost looking at it from a Game Boy Castlevania level. And I just think roughly it's kind of just more of the same. Like a Shadow Complex as well. That came out. What was that? It was 2010 or something like that, ballpark. Definitely before Ori. So, and you've definitely touched on some of the key points I wanted to raise. So, just around the art and sound design. From an art and sound design perspective, basically...
Shadow Complex was 2009.
2009.
Yeah,
I was kind of thinking it was 2007, and then I was thinking, no, that can't be 2007. But it was very early in the 360 sort of life cycle.
Such a good game.
Well, and just like going on a diversion, Shadow Complex, like I love that game. It's such a good game. And when they said that Shadow Complex wouldn't work on the PS5, I was like, oh, that sucks. And then it's so weird to hear everyone's just saying, oh, all the games that don't work, they're shit anyway. And I'm like, no, Shadow Complex is great. You're kidding me. That's like a very, very good game.
Fools.
Yeah, with
fools.
Ori. What was that? Sorry?
They're fools. They're fools.
Oh, yeah, they are fools. Yeah, so just on their art and sound design, I think it is the highlight of this game. Having played through the whole thing, it's the one thing that, stepping away from the game and just, even looking at the gameplay footage that I captured when I was playing it myself, it's just such a good looking game. And it also sounds good, like the music, the tone, it's just like executed so perfectly. And I actually went and looked at some of the developers like prototypes for the game. And initially it looks very different. And you can see a lot of polish and a lot of love has gone into this game. And, as I said, I think that's the standout component of this game. I think if you're a lover of Metroidvanias like I am, I think this game's well worth playing just purely for the fact that it might be the best looking Metroidvania even today, in today's standards. In terms of the mechanics, I think whenever you're talking about a Metroidvania, you need to talk about the mechanics, the upgrades. This is probably the part that I was most disappointed about because it felt very, pain in by numbers. Like, yeah, and in fairness, I've played so many Metroidvanias. When I play through them, even from the start, I feel like, oh, yep, I can see what's going to happen here. Oh, yep, I'll need the double jump here. Oh, yep. All those kind of things. And also just like for me personally, from the start, it felt like it heaped a lot on you very, very quickly. And it wasn't really clicking at first. So personally, it felt very rough, within the first half hour to hour. And then from that point on, it clicked very well. So it's not to say that the mechanics and the way it all worked together wasn't seamless. It was like once you get a bit of your head around it, it just felt like that introduction wasn't as seamless as you see from like Super Metroid and, the sort of gold standards in the genre. On the difficulty curve. So, I think you've touched on really like all my key areas that I've thought about. I think the difficulty curve on this game is fantastic. Like very much so. The game at the start, it's pretty straightforward, and then it just starts to ramp up, and then you start to die a lot more, and by the end of the game. And one thing I wanted to say is, and I wanted to ask you as well, when you play, so I played this just on my PC with a DualShock 4 controller because that's kind of the dedicated PC controller that I have. When you hold a Xbox One controller, do you have two fingers on the what do you call it, like in Xbox language, bumper and trigger? Or do you have one finger, like an index finger only?
One finger, 100%. The only time I'll ever do it is if a game requires you to press both at the same time or anything like that.
Yeah, so like that's how I play, and same as Rocket League. Like Rocket League, it's more probably advantageous to use two fingers, but I just play with one and I can get by. With this game, it gets so intense at the end that my brain was just like forcing myself to, or not my brain, I just felt like I had to hold both of the buttons at the same time. So I had my index and middle fingers on there. So I've never played a game like that ever, where I felt compelled.
I'm literally holding a controller right now, just being like, actually feels really weird to use a middle finger for the trigger.
Yeah, and I felt like, and because also by the way, I'd probably played 6 to 7 hours of the game just with my index fingers, and then yeah, like I was saying, because I needed to dash and do some other moves and grab on walls and do a few other things. Like it just felt like, how am I supposed to do this if I don't hold both at the same time, or like have the ability to press one whilst holding down the trigger? And now I'm not sure if on the Xbox One, maybe it's easier to press the trigger and the bumper at the same time with one finger. I don't know. It's definitely not possible for me with a DualShock. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
It's pretty easy to do, but it's not going to say it's not awkward.
Yeah. So for me, it was not a bad thing of the game. I actually love difficult games, and it definitely ramped up. I had like hundreds of deaths in the end, but partly because I sometimes it's just quicker to die because you just respawn so quickly. So like just the quality of life, how the game plays, fantastic, loved it. And then just, going to the post game and then completion, a big part of any Metroidvania, I think, is around, getting to 100%. I don't think there's been a Metroid game, or like, sorry, when I say Metroid, a Metroidvania that I haven't 100%ed that I've played. Like I just kind of get into it and then I got to get 100%. I just got to do this.
You'll have fun with Hollow Knight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been saving that one because I reckon I'll really love that game. Yes.
By all accounts, that game, if you do the extra content at the end, that can get really rough.
Yeah. Well, I'm not that good of a gamer, and I struggle with like the final end game level for SteamWorld Dig 2. That's pretty tricky, but yeah. So with the completion and the post game, I was a little bit disappointed, and I did some research about it afterwards. I didn't know. So the definitive edition, you finish the game, and then you can reboot from. It's like New Game Plus, right? You reboot from a save. You haven't beaten the boss, but you can go through and complete all the areas that you haven't completed prior. I didn't know that that's new to this version, the definitive edition. When you played the original, you would like have to go back yourself, essentially. Like there's no like New Game Plus or anything like that. One thing I will say is, normally with the Metroidvania, I like to just go through it, not collect everything like crazily, and then collect it afterwards, or like have another run and try to collect everything. With this game, I wasn't really focused too much on collecting everything, but I had like 90 something % by the time I got to the end of the game, and it literally only took me 20 to 30 minutes or something to complete it 100%. And it was a little bit disappointing, to be honest, because I usually because normally what happens is there are, those final, 3 to 5%, which are just so hard to do in these type of games, but it was extremely straightforward to complete it 100%.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Is this game less a Metroidvania at its core and more a platformer?
No, it's a Metroidvania. Definitely.
Because if you think about it, a lot of Metroidvanias don't have super tough platforming challenges. The challenge is more so in the exploration and everything. Whereas Ori seems like it's, and this is coming from, just completely about what we're talking about, not my own personal experience. Like it's definitely not more of a platformer that just happens to be structured like a Metroidvania, if that makes sense.
No. Like, it's definitely 100% a Metroidvania.
Okay,
I mean, to the point where they're paying homage to Metroid, the original Metroid, in certain areas where it's like, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this is literally the map for one of the caverns in Metroid, the first Metroid. So it's definitely a Metroidvania. Like that's the first genre I'd put it. Okay. It's a heavy platformer, like more of a platformer than a lot of Metroidvanias that I've played. And again, context, I'm not the greatest gamer, so probably people are thinking, oh, this is easy actually. And the last one before I get to like where I rank this is just around I lost my train of thought. So the post game completion, the story. So the story of this game did not grip me at all. And I'd imagine that some people would like the story of this game. It just felt very like, I don't know, it just felt like it was very predictable. It was well presented. It just wasn't engaging at all for me. Like,
I think I've got it.
And I won't give any spoilers, but yeah.
I'm getting the feeling, I've got a direct comparison to how I feel about another game that is kind of like, I think, the way that you feel about this game. So when you get to your ranking, I'll kind of bring it up there.
Yeah. Well, I think like I'm about at that stage. So again, like we don't, well, like, whether we stick to this format, but I think it's better, rather than just giving it a number ranking, actually just plotting it and kind of going, hey, where does this fit in the universe? So what I've done is I've actually like, got what's it called? A spectrum. And you can't see this, unfortunately.
A Metroidvania spectrum.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
Metroidvania spectrum. So again, just like we did with the 2D platformers, I've got like bad, average, and gold standard, and it's actually really hard to find, like, to think of the bad ones. So again, like, it's essentially, is it a good game or bad game? It's definitely a good game. And on the bad spectrum, I've put uh, as a joke, Wonder Boy Asher in Monster World.
Oh man.
And controversially, I think to some people, I've actually put Metroid as the standard average game in the
Yeah, I
Metroidvania.
agree with that, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it's that great of a game,
Yeah.
and I think it's almost a bad game.
Now
Right?
here's the question. What's the top?
Oh, well, it's Super Metroid,
Okay, all right. I would
gold
have
standard. I
accepted
think,
that or Symphony of the Night, either of the two.
yeah. So Symphony of the Night is the background of the whole graphic for good.
Bring
So
the
I've got
Vania,
both of
bring the
them.
Vania in.
Yeah, I've got. But I think, like, if you're gonna, and you know, people are gonna attack this, but to me, Super Metroid set the standard, really. And then I think Castlevania, for some people, exceeded it, some people didn't. But I don't think it necessarily changed the whole genre or anything like that. So, in terms of where I rank this game, like, it's, you know, like, even some of the Metroidvanias that we mentioned, like, to me, I rank them below, like Ori below. Like, I'd put this below Shadow Complex, you know, pretty much all the ones that we mentioned. I think, like, on the whole scale, like, if you're just visualizing it, it's probably around 2/3 the way from average to gold standard. It does a lot of things really great, and as I said, it's probably one of the best looking Metroidvanias that I've seen. But unfortunately for me, it just doesn't, like, do anything that's, like, blowing my mind, or, like, even in the context of 2014 when it came out. It's just, what I would say is just such a well executed Metroidvania, and you know, if you've played through a lot of them, or you want to have one that has a very, like, high, you know, art style sense, then yeah, definitely play it. It's well worth playing it. It's very fun. And, like, you know, I picked it up on Tuesday, and I think I 100%ed it by, like, Thursday. So I mean, that does tell you that I enjoyed the game. It's not I didn't like it. It's just, yeah, for me, it doesn't hit those highs as some of the other genre standards do. But it's, yeah, very, very good game. Very enjoyable.
So the game that I was thinking about that is a comparison for me, completely different genre, is Child of Light. So Child of Light had a lot of buzz around it, a lot of people love that game. So I don't know if you know much about it, but Child of Light is an Ubisoft kind of like turn-based, very 2D kind of, you know, nice art style RPG, and that game did really nothing for me. Like, it's technically proficient.
Mm.
Like, there's parts of it that play really well. I didn't really like Battle System that much, but it played well. Like, there's so much it did well, but it just didn't do anything for me. But a lot of people loved it, and they're like, "Oh, Child of Light is this classic," and blah blah blah. So the way you're talking about Ori kind of reminds me of that. It's like it just didn't grip you. You know, you
Mm.
understand that it's actually a good game, but it just doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Especially
I'm just
like when you
looking
talked
through it
about the
now. It
plot.
does seem like that. It does seem like that, where people, even if I'm looking, because I always go to the Steam reviews, I find them to be probably the best ones. And, you know, always number one thing people talk about Child of Light is how it looks. And that's very much like Ori.
Yeah.
Like, people always start with, it looks amazing. And it does, right? It's just, you know, if you strip away Super Metroid's looks and, you know, like Ori's looks and all these other kind of things, like, Super Metroid has clever things in it. And I'm not saying Ori has nothing. It's just, you know, there's parts of Super Metroid and those type of standard games where you feel like you're in a conversation with the developer, like, and they're trying to trick you or make you do things or think things, and you're like, oh damn, I didn't think of that. That's, like, clever how they've done this, you know. And I never had any of those moments with Ori. Like, I just had a really good time, really well executed, and sometimes you just want more of that genre. And I'm very much like that with Metroidvanias. Like,
Have you
I could play so many of them.
have you ever tried the Mummy Remastered?
No, I've heard that's also a bit overrated. So, but I do want to play that as
I
well.
think it's really cool. I haven't played through the whole thing, but it's I I I don't think it's overrated in the sense that, like, nobody expected that game to be good at all, and that's why people were talking about it, because it's like, wait,
Yeah.
they made a game based on that apparently horrible Tom Cruise Mummy film,
That's so forgotten, by the way.
Yeah, it's a 2D metroidvania by Way Forward. You're like, what? No, it's
I
the
know.
Mummy remastered. Like, it's not remastered. It's what's it called?
I think that's what it's called, Mummy Remastered, isn't it?
Is it remastered? No.
I thought it was.
The term
I'm just checking
remastered
it
is
now.
so used for different things these days.
Oh, no, sorry. The Mummy Demastered.
So that's it. Yeah.
That's mad.
So I'm like, oh man, that is such it's just the weirdest thing licensed game probably released, in a long time. Anyway.
Yeah, I really want to play that game, actually. Yeah. So, look, as I said with Ori, overall, it's definitely at the threshold where, if you love Metroidvanias, you'll really enjoy it. I just, for me, I would be really surprised if someone said, this is my favorite Metroidvania of all time, and I think that kind of says a lot about the game.
Cool.
Awesome. Well,